So Andrea, do you want to, since you're first in my box of windows, do you want to take 5 minutes or so and tell us about what's going on in West Seattle?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thanks for having me. My name is Andrea Diamond, and I'm just going to give you a quick overview and update for the West Seattle Public School Equity Fund. We're a local nonprofit that launched in April 2021 and dispersed our first round of fund shifting this school year. Yay! We were started by myself and two other West Seattle moms, and we kind of started with an idea to redistribute PTA funds in West Seattle to address inequitable distribution of resources based on historical patterns of redlining that is in our neighborhood and every neighborhood really, but fund shifting, we thought was really a way to pool PTA funds and distribute them more equitably across the 13 West Seattle public school elementary and K-8 schools. And the thing that's particularly unique about West Seattle and our District 6 is that our schools are pretty much like half Title I schools and half well-resourced schools, divided almost exactly along the previous redlining zones. So we started out by presenting the idea of pooling funds to all of the West Seattle elementary school PTAs and spent the year presenting to all of them. And for our first year, we asked that the well-resourced schools make whatever contribution that they could, acknowledging that they might not have had a chance to put it in their budget yet. And then we asked for the second year that they include a budget line item for fund shifting, which would be 2022-23 as a percentage of their budget, as opposed to like a specific dollar amount. And as a goal, we asked PTAs to aim to fund shift 10% of their budgets with the idea of walking towards 30% down the road. And that is really just a guidance though. So there's no set amount to participate. But some PTAs jumped in at 10% right away their first year. And then several of them came up to it in their projected budget for this coming year. So for our first year, we had Gatewood, Genesee Hill, Lafayette, who's on the call today, and Pathfinder contribute $20,917 to Concord, Highland Park, Rocks Hill, Santaslow, and West Seattle Elementary. And so basically the way we did it is that each participating school, whether it's a contributing school or a recipient school, has a seat for two representatives on the advisory committee. And then the advisory committee works to kind of build community between schools, but also determines who's eligible to receive funds and then how the funds will be split on an annual basis. So that's reviewed every year. And for this year, we had one additional school join, which is Arbor Heights. So now we have 10 of the 13 schools in West Seattle participating. And two schools are having active discussions with their PTAs right now. So hopefully we'll get them on board as well this year. But based on what was written into budgets in the spring for the schools already participating, we are on track to double the amount of money that we shift in West Seattle for next school year. We're really excited about that. And there's a kind of brief synopsis of where we've been and where we're going. And I don't know if there's time for questions or if you're doing that later, I'll defer to Juliana.
Yeah, I actually was typing while I have so many questions. So great. And I'm thinking that maybe we'll just kind of roll through all three groups and hold questions till the end to see what kinds of similarities or differences we're finding, if that's okay for the panelists. Is that okay with you, Andrea? Okay.
That works for me.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing. It's so exciting to hear about what's happening. Christina, do you mind going?
Hi, my name is Christina Jimenez. I am a parent of 3 children at Graham Hill Elementary and Aki Karosi, and a teacher at Lowell Elementary, formerly at Dunlap Elementary, and I'm one of the founding members of the Southeast Seattle Schools Fundraising Alliance. During the height of COVID, I was also a PTA lead at Graham Hill, and I had been running the annual move-a-thon for a few years there. Apologize if you can hear, I'm at my daughter's basketball practice at South Shore and super loud, so I'm sorry. But I had been running the move-a-thon there for 2 or 3 years, and we'd brought in about $2,000 to $4,000 every year, and the PTA had come to me to ask to do it again, and we were trying to be creative about how to do it, since this was in the height of the lockdown, the year that we weren't back at school yet. We all went back at school in April, so it was like February of that year. And I was working at Dunlap at the time and felt like we needed to sort of figure out another idea on how to raise money more collaboratively, since it was like firsthand seeing what my kids would get or my kids' teachers would receive and all the support that was needed. We were getting a lot of asks at Graham Hill for support with utility checks, rent checks, gas cards, things like that. And I saw the same need down the road at Dunlap. And so basically we just put out a call on Facebook, and was like, what other schools want to get involved in doing some sort of shared move-a-thon. And we had a pretty easy call in that lots of people said yes. And people were willing to be really creative about it. We decided it was pretty much like, in doing this, we're going to pool the money and split it evenly. Received a lot of support from Vivian with regards to helping us get connected and thinking broadly about our work, and how to sort of figure this out financially too, because we needed to find a place to pool our money. We're not our own nonprofit. All our money gets pooled through Alliance for Education. And so all the money got pooled through Alliance for Ed, and we distributed it equally the first year. And then the next year, or that during all those conversations, we had 12 schools on board, all District 7 schools. So all schools south of Beacon Hill International Elementary, all elementary, and we had South Shore as our K-8 school. And basically we just were having a lot of conversations about whether it even made sense for us to pool the funds equally. We had no idea how much we were going to make. That year, I think we made about $12,000, maybe 14. No, now I'm all confused what year it was, but about $12,000 equally for each school. Total surprise. We had no idea we would bring in so much money. We didn't do any kind of additional fundraising beyond some press. It was really thrown together really quickly in the course of 2 months with weekly calls. We just created work groups and people just started talking to each other. And we got a lot of support from other PTAs, that's where other PTAs started contacting us and being like, how can we get on board? How can we help you? Several PTAs, Hawthorne, which is in our area, but hadn't signed on to be part of our group, was like, can we pay for interpretation and translation? Several schools, in Bryan Elementary, Thornton Creek, paid for our prizes. So there was just a ton of support from other schools, and it was really exciting. So we did this move-a-thon, and then we were always trying to think really consciously about how equitable we were being in our gifting, because some schools have this capacity to fundraise a ton more and others just didn't. So the following year, and this year also, we're in our 3rd year now, we split our funds equally, and then we created an equity model based on race and special education population, ELL students, homeless population, and size of school that allows the first 50% to be given equally to all 17 schools, because now we have 17 schools on board. We have all the elementary schools in District 7, plus both K-8 schools, plus both middle schools. So our funds are going to be equally distributed the first half, and then split using our equity model that's agreed upon by all the schools before signing on for each year. So we have like a contract each year. And last year we were able to raise $290,000. And then we were given an anonymous donation of another $200,000 last summer. And we were also recognized by the Smithsonian Museum. So we're going to be our last year's bingo board and our first water bottle are going to be in the Smithsonian Giving Back project. That's super exciting. And it's a lot of work and a lot of conversations and a lot of talking and a lot of trying to listen and understand everybody's perspectives, and a lot of work for our community members. We have representatives from each school that come to meetings twice a month. And then we also have like ongoing work groups that meet on the other 2 weeks, the off 2 weeks, that include equity and advocacy, the move-a-thon logistics, outreach, which includes like press and business outreach. And all while folks are trying to, this is their volunteer work, and really trying to like think critically about the work we're doing. Never imagined I would ever do fundraising. Always was like, I just kind of fell into it when I did it at Graham Hill. And so really trying to keep an equity-minded, collaborative-based fundraising, making sure that like the collaborative part and the equity part is way before the fundraising part. And always questioning, like, what are we going to do with this money? Why do we need this money? That's really conversations that we keep coming back to. So so grateful for all the support from so many PTAs across the city, just really so many emails and so much support, and funds too, and volunteers. So thank you.
Thanks, Christina, for sharing. The last group is the group that I'm a part of, the North End Seattle Schools PTA Alliance. We're calling ourselves NESPA. So we're kind of following CESPA's lead there. And some of my co-conspirators are going to be joining any minute. Megan, she just came in, and my other friend, Maura, she's also on the line. Megan, thanks for popping in. And I'll just kind of do a quick intro and then you can take it away. So I'll just say very quickly that Maura and I started meeting over the summer. We're in North Seattle schools talking about this equity issue and wanting to think about how to build something similar to CESPA, or how that could look, or just kind of curious. So we spent some time learning from CESPA. They graciously shared their learnings with us and encouraged us to do a lot of community building in the North End. And so we started that process, Maura and I, and then other co-conspirators joined in, and we've been trying to have kind of monthly or every few weeks meetings to try to see if there was an appetite for something like this in the North End. And I'll just say one more thing, and then Megan, you'll take it away. So then in our December gathering, when we were trying to like socialize this idea and try to build some momentum around this, we started to realize that we were having different schools and communities coming in and out of these meetings. And we really wanted to have like a grounding document to help us have people sign on to something. So it was so useful to hear what you were sharing, Andrea, about this is what we're asking of you, and this is what this means, because we didn't really have that. And so a few of us got together over the last month or so and wrote kind of a founding document with room for improvement and comments and feedback. So maybe Megan, do you want to take it away and like share kind of from that what we're hoping to do maybe?
Sure. Hello. I'm so sorry I'm late. I thought this meeting started at 7:30 and I was so proud of myself for being right on time. And here I am half an hour late.
I might have misspoke. So thank you for coming, Megan.
So apologies for being tardy, and I feel like I'm kind of jumping in to the deep end here, but so we are, I think I can't even remember how I got into contact with Maura and Juliana and Amy, but but we came together and realized that we were all kind of after similar things and were inspired by initiatives like CESFA. But we're clear too, as we had several conversations, that the North End is different from other parts of the city, and realized that a pure fund sharing model might not be the way to kick things off. So fund sharing is definitely on our plate, but the framework that we developed is kind of a 3-part piece where we want, first and foremost, to be an entity where information sharing happens across schools. And we had one incident at Sacagawea this year where we were understaffed, or we had too few teachers for the number of students we had, and it became a really big issue. And we kind of launched this email campaign to the district, and eventually, and they denied us more teachers, and then eventually allocated another teacher. And that just became kind of this exemplary issue where we were like, what's happening in other schools? Are they having similar campaigns? Do they even have the capacity to do to have campaigns like this? So we started having all these kind of come to Jesus moments where we were like, if we knew what was happening inside the walls of other schools, we would be able to advocate on each other's behalf and have an even stronger, more powerful voice. So that's kind of one strand of the North End Seattle Schools PTA Alliance, which we have, or NESPA, which we have named ourselves. And then the other 2 strands are collective advocacy, which is something that some folks are really passionate about, and that's where their skills lie. So advocacy at the district level or even at the state level. And then the third strand is that of resource sharing. And that does include a fund sharing piece, but it also refers to other forms of resource sharing, like in-kind donations or drives, or sharing of labor, like landscape beautification projects, or IT support, if someone has that skill set. And so for this alliance, we're really imagining that people can kind of go toward the strand that makes the most sense for them, that they have skills or resources to give time or money to, and that suit their ideologies. Given kind of much more disparate demographics in the North End, we have encountered a variety of ideologies, particularly around fund sharing. For some folks, it's just absolutely a non-starter. And for other folks, it's like the end all be all. Sorry, my children are being very loud, of course. So that's why we wanted to have kind of options for participation. And the expectation, I don't know how long I should be talking, Juliana. Is that
just like another, we said about 5 minutes per group. So
okay. All right.
Yeah, you're doing great.
So I guess the last thing I'll say is just that we invite schools and or families from schools to participate kind of how they wish, but by committing to kind of showing up within at least one of those 3 kind of buckets on a regular basis, coming out to meetings, providing information from their schools and participating in whatever initiatives those subcommittees decide on. And we also decided that we wanted to put on an event in June, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we had an idea of a field day, because who doesn't love field day? And it would just be kind of a networking event and also a fundraising event. And whoever is kind of leading the fund or resource sharing piece would then decide how fund sharing is going to happen and how funds are going to be redistributed, whether within or beyond kind of the bounds of the North End. I think that's all I have to say. Juliana, please add
No, yeah,
anything.
that's great. I think that the only thing I'll add is that the real, like this fund sharing idea, and I think what we're sharing about, I think Christina touched on, like, why are we fundraising? You know, and the goal being that we can start to see each other in community and to become better and more powerful advocates to actually change the system, right? So like this, some of this fund sharing work that we're thinking about in the North End is for the goal of community building so that we can become better advocates and work ourselves out of a job. That would be the ideal. So just in the interest of time, so I'm going to put back on my moderator hat. No more Nespa, because now Megan's here and Maura. They can answer questions. I was thinking that we had talked about breakout rooms, but just since I also think it's so great to get to some action items that we can do as Take Back PTA. So I'd love to open it up to the community to like ask questions of these three groups, and what are you learning or hearing? What are you thinking when you hear this? Do you want to join in? So you can either raise your hand or just come off mute. That's fine.
This is Christy. I wanted to ask, how do you imagine the relationships between your groups?
Has anybody thought about that at all?
I'll share my point of view.
Yeah, please.
I think, I think it's great that it's much more manageable to start this sort of thing at a neighborhood level. And I think it's a great opportunity for us all to have a lot of like trial and error and learning opportunities. And so I think, potentially down the line, we could come together as a big district, and then we'll have all this experience under our belt that we can draw from of what worked here and what didn't work here and things we have tried. That's my view.
Yeah, I would say similarly, we've met casually through, or not casually, we've had conversations to meet to share ideas and feedback and how things are going. And I would hope that we have more of that, like, as Andrea said, to sort of link and share a little bit more about in order to come together. There was a lot of ideas in the very beginning for CESFA where PTAs were calling us saying like, can we join? And at the very beginning, we were really talking through that. And a lot of our members were feeling like anxious about just having like other schools join, just because it felt like it was really hard that year even to get 12 folks around a Zoom table. And I got to tell you, like, even jumping to 17 now is really hard. It's a lot. I mean, you guys know how that is if you're coming regularly to these meetings. It's just a huge commitment, not just of time, but like of emotions, of creating relationships that are authentic. And then doing it over Zoom is so different. So there's that piece. And so while some folks were like, yeah, let's just make this big now. A lot of folks helped people slow down, or like let our group to slow down so that we didn't grow beyond D7 until there was sort of more momentum at the district level, which I think is what's happening now.
Nespa folks, you want to chime in?
Well, a couple things that we have discussed in our group meetings is that, like Juliana has mentioned some critiques, I think, of the more kind of location specific initiatives, namely that, you know, the North End doesn't need any more fundraising, and, you know, we're perpetuating inequity by maybe doing fund sharing kind of within the bounds of our location. And, you know, to those critiques, I've always been like, I really want to connect all across the city. This needs to be a citywide initiative. But as Christina was just saying, like, there's just the logistical constraints of organizing and meeting. So I really hope, I mean, it seems like Take Back the PTA could be a good platform for these various initiatives to come together regularly and check in. And as they grow and gain momentum, potentially, you know, connect in more formal ways. And I mean, in my fantasy world, we are, as Juliana said, putting ourselves out of a job, but maybe in the meantime, you know, growing and connecting and linking up, you know, in a more systematic way as we grow.
I'm going to take dealer's choice for a second. I'm going to ask Vivian for, like, you've been in this game for a long time. And I'm just curious, when you hear that, what are your thoughts, wise leader?
Well, I don't know about that, but no, as you were talking, I was thinking about how if we were to have a citywide initiative, we would be one of the biggest cities or districts to have anything like that. And the only one I can think of that's comparable is Portland. And theirs is very different, and it didn't come directly from community, but I'm wondering if folks would be interested in hearing from people in Portland about that, because I've had a system there of fund sharing since the, I'm gonna say, like mid to late 90s. And if it would be of any interest for people here to hear about their experiences, the good and the bad. There is actually a pretty coordinated movement right now to reform their system significantly to address some of the inequities that it encapsulates. So it could be an interesting kind of way to think about some of the pitfalls that we could come across and maybe avoid. But yeah, if that's of interest to people, then I would be happy to grab some folks from down there and
Thumbs up. What's your react button, folks?
Okay, I will get on that.
I mean, I'm thumbs up all the time. Great. What about other questions or concerns? Like, when folks hear this, are you like, I'm gonna say your name wrong, Gayume? Did I get it kind of right or not at all?
Not at all, but that's a great pronunciation.
Oh, tell me.
Yeah. It's like it's a hard one. It's Guillaume, 2 syllables, Guillaume.
Oh, 100% wrong. Okay, Guillaume, thank you.
But I think it might be the best mispronunciation I've ever had, so thanks for that. I think some of you have alluded to, like, maybe I don't know what the right word is, negative reactions or resistance to these ideas that as you're growing these networks. And I just kind of want to, that's something that I've been experiencing lately. And I'm curious, like, how that's gone, you know, what it's looked like. And, you know, I heard, like, North Seattle, you've got this idea of having 3 buckets. I'm just curious to hear more from all of you about, you know, what you would recommend based on your experience.
Should we go in the same order or mix it up? Christina, let's just mix it up.
I can go. I said this when Juliana and I first talked like 2 years ago. For us, like, the big thing that made it work, and I know we're come from a community where there's not a ton of fundraising, but there are, and most of our schools are Title I. There are schools that do have significant fundraising, not to the extent of some other schools, but certainly like way more than other schools in our community. And there has been definite still a rub with that as we've gone into it. But initially, I can't say enough about how amazing it was just to do a shared event, like, because everybody just, I mean, yes, we were in the heart of COVID. We had that. We had like the beginning of Zoom meetings and nobody was burnt out from that. And everybody was like, oh yeah, this is awesome. Like we're connecting with people who are not in our families. However, like just having one event was very concrete. Like all the money for this event, nothing else. We're not touching anything else. Nobody's taking money. Nobody's asking any other money, like all this other money. And then when people started to realize like all the benefits of that, I think that it helped folks who might have been like, ooh, not sure, can't do that. So, and it's complicated. And now we have like multiple move-a-thon events happening in like in all the schools, and like all that money is going to be compiled and it's like bigger and bigger. But a shared event is easy for people to wrap their heads around starting this process and these conversations, I think.
Can I just follow up just for a minute about what I heard you say, unexpected benefits, right? That of doing something together. And can you just say some of those out loud? That's something that we can maybe hang our hats on when we're having these conversations.
Well, I think like for the folks doing it, like meeting other people and developing relationships, understanding other people's experiences, like hearing that, I mean, I'll never forget when the site leader at MLK, when she got $14,000, they had never had any money. And she was like, now we can have coffee for our teachers once, like literally once a year or something like that. Like she and our families, like there was just so much gratitude for something that, you know, even for a school that doesn't raise a ton of money at Graham Hill still felt like, oh, wow. Yeah. Like we've had that, you know? So I think people hearing different perspectives was like really important. Like, where's the money going now? Oh, money is still going to rent checks. Money is still going to like food tables, like, you know, and I think that helps understand, like, you know, in our small community, like where you know, what our children are experiencing across just different school settings. So I'd say that was probably the biggest benefit.
I love that, seeing everybody's kids as your own, right?
Totally.
I mean, what a huge thing, right? That's huge. Nespa, shaking up the order. Do you want to say something about what we've heard? And how we're responding?
So yeah, so the question was about kind of barriers and bottlenecks that we're facing. So I think two of the biggest barriers that I have faced in the year and a half that I've been plugging away at this is one, getting people to show up to conversations, and getting the same people out. I feel like I've sat in so many of these meetings and almost every time everyone I'm with is like somebody I have not seen before. So my hope is that, you know, by kind of formalizing this more, there will be more like regular visibility and therefore kind of more consistent turnout. The other thing I have encountered is just a really big spectrum of kind of ideologies about what this work should look like. And I alluded to it before, but kind of one like illustrious example was at a recent meeting that Maura and Juliana, I think your kid was 6, so you weren't there that night, but I was there and in a small breakout room and was talking with a couple parents, and they had such incredibly disparate kind of ideological frameworks. One of them, for one person, fund sharing was an absolute non-starter. They came from a wealthy school that raises a couple $100,000 a year at least. And they were like, we're a very small school. We can't spare anything. And we need all the money we raise because we need a school counselor and a this and a that. And then another person in that same meeting was like, what are we doing if not fund sharing? Like there is nothing else that makes a difference beyond this kind of material redistribution of wealth. And if you're not interested in fund sharing, I am not interested in participating in this movement. So I was like, how do I hold both of these perspectives in at once, you know. So that was what really motivated our decision to have kind of these parallel tracks so that people could participate in whatever kind of was aligned most with their beliefs.
And Christina has to leave in just a couple minutes. So just want to publicly thank her for being here and for all of the good work that CESFA does, and how Christina shows up all the time for all these kinds of things. So thank you so much. Andrea, do you want to, oh, sorry, Christina, did you?
I said anytime.
Oh, thank you. It's great to learn together. Andrea, what about you? What are you encountering in West Seattle that might be pushing back against what's happening?
Yeah, we've definitely experienced our fair share of pushback, I would say. You know, I mean, I feel like we're definitely on the line with that divide of like having those well-resourced schools, and then the Title I schools were very much kind of in the thick of it, I guess. I think the hardest bits have been, we were, you know, kind of maybe a little bit different because it's a different situation, have been adamant about not creating new fundraising channels, just because there already is so much fundraising at the well-resourced schools. And so then it's about taking from the budgets that are already existing. So that's a harder sell for sure. And then also another thing that's gotten a lot of pushback is we're very clear about that this is fund shifting. It's not a donation. It's not a grant. This money is being shifted. We don't have ownership over it. It's to address, you know, the historic patterns and wealth distribution that has been inequitable in our community. And so for some folks, they're like 100% yes. And other folks are like, what? How are you going to know what the impact is? So, you know, there's a lot of those conversations going on. I think one thing that I've seen just from doing so many of these is that there are often a couple of folks in the room who are quite loud and take up a lot of the space. And on a Zoom call, as you all know, it's like so hard to read the room and get the energy. But what I found is like when things come to vote afterwards, because that's generally we're presenting and then the membership or the board is voting about if they want to participate or not. And it's, you know, overwhelmingly passes. So it's like the experience on a Zoom call versus what all of the little black boxes on the Zoom call are thinking, it's not necessarily transparent. And maybe that'll change once we're like all in a room with each other and can converse more. But other than that, I would just add on to all of us being in community together has been the biggest thing, because I think the biggest controversy is that we've all been so siloed and have these really inaccurate views of what's going on at the other schools and what resources are available at the other schools. And for everybody to come together and realizing like we all have so much to learn from each other. I mean, you know, I think a lot of the well-resourced schools really struggle with community building, and that's something that's like so strong at the Title I schools. And so just seeing that give and take, and that we all have so much to gain by being in community together has been like the happy rainbow to all the pushback and tough conversations that we've had too.
Andrea, can I ask about your process for developing? I'm not sure what your kind of fund sharing framework looks like, and I'm so kicking myself for missing the first part of the meeting, but I see that it's being recorded, so I'm definitely going to watch it. But can you just tell me a little bit about the process for developing what you decided to do as far as fund sharing goes? Was there disagreement? Like what did the process kind of look and feel like?
Yeah, so we started with just a pretty small group of myself and two other West Seattle moms. And so and we were all pretty passionate about this issue. So kind of together, we decided what we were going to be asking. And then now we have an advisory committee who determines like how the money is divided and who's eligible for the funds. But as far as like that initial ask and what the criteria were going to be, it was quite a small group that came together. But I should say, initially it started with talking to all the Title I schools and getting their feedback on what would be helpful and then responding to that.
I did see Christina put her hand up, but then now she's off camera. So oh, there, you're here.
I'm here. I just wanted to, I don't want to leave, but I do have to go. But I do just want to say sometimes it's so intimidating to be like overrun by the loud voices, but in developing relationships with people outside of this, of like the Zoom or wherever you're hearing those conversations, wherever you're hearing that negative feedback, those folks often don't consistently show up again. I mean, actually, I really don't know. I can't say that's the case all the time, but it's if you're like having people often will like sort of back down when they start to hear, they don't necessarily believe that what we're doing is right, but they're not on board, but they realize like, oh, this doesn't sound good or look good that we're saying this in this community publicly, and often they won't like continue to show. I think like, again, the relationships offline, like the coffees, the phone calls, the things that you're working to develop with people matter more than those loud voices in the moment, even though it's really hard to keep those folks out of your brain.
Thank you for that. I'm going to kind of wrap up this little part or big part of this meeting because I'm going to throw it to Vivian, because the whole point of PTA, right? Our job is advocacy. And I think that that's like the through line in all of this and all of this work is what I'm hearing and reflecting is like this idea of community building and my dog wants attention and seeing each other, right? And seeing each other's kids as our own. And like I started with like this idea that we can advocate better and more powerfully when we are doing this in community and not in silos. So whatever we can do in this fund sharing work that can help us do that better. And I'm hearing that that's like that's why I was poking a little bit and hoping to hear that that was the benefit, because I think that is. I think that we can do big things.